Justice on the Frontier. The air cracked with gunfire as Caleb Morgan dropped to one knee behind the boulder, his Colt single-action Army revolver barking twice in rapid succession. The weapon, commonly known as the Peacemaker, was a .45 caliber six-shooter that had served him faithfully since his cavalry days. A man screamed, then fell silent. Blood trickled down Caleb's left arm, where a Sharps carbine round had grazed his shoulder, but his grip remained steady. 20 yards away, an Apache woman crouched behind a fallen ponderosa pine, her eyes wide with terror and determination. "Stay down, Sarah!" Caleb shouted as another bullet splintered bark inches from her head. Across the small clearing, cold blood Jackson and his remaining men retreated toward their horses, dragging one wounded companion. Jackson's Winchester .73 gleamed in the sunlight as he paused to fire a covering shot. "This ain't over, Morgan." Jackson's voice carried on the wind, edged with fury and promise. "That Apache wench is worth more to me than you can imagine." Caleb watched them go, his weathered face set like iron beneath his three-day stubble. Only when the hoofbeats faded did he holster his weapon and move to Sarah's side. "You hit?" he asked, his voice gruff but concerned. She shook her head, dark eyes studying his wound. "You are." "It's nothing." Caleb tore a strip from his shirt and bound the wound with practiced efficiency. The scar-crossed hands of a soldier who'd seen too much death to be bothered by a mere flesh wound. "We need to move. They'll be back with more men." The sun hung low over the western horizon, painting the desert landscape in blood-red hues. Perfect metaphor for the day they'd had. Caleb checked his Colt, ejecting the spent cartridges and reloading with fresh rounds from his ammunition belt. Each movement precise, mechanical, ingrained after years of survival where hesitation meant death. "Why?" Sarah finally asked as they mounted his chestnut stallion, a sturdy cavalry-trained mount that could outrun most horses on the frontier. "Why risk your life for me? You don't even know me." Caleb's eyes, blue as a mountain lake but hard as flint, stared straight ahead. "I've seen enough injustice in this world. Didn't need to see more." 3 days earlier, Caleb had been nursing a whiskey at the Silver Creek Saloon when he'd witnessed Jackson and his men dragging Sarah through the street like a prize calf. The town had turned a blind eye. Just another Indian captive, they figured. But Caleb had seen the terror in her eyes, recognized the look of a human being treated worse than an animal. Something deep inside him, something he thought had died years ago on blood-soaked battlefields, had stirred to life. That night, he'd freed her from the makeshift cell behind the livery stable. By morning, they were fugitives, with Jackson's gang in hot pursuit. They rode hard until nightfall, following a creek bed to mask their trail. Caleb employed every tracking evasion technique he'd learned in the cavalry, riding through water to hide hoof prints, doubling back occasionally, and using rocky terrain where tracks wouldn't show. When they finally stopped to rest, Sarah revealed the true reason for her capture. "I saw them," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. "Jackson and his men. They murdered a settler family 3 weeks ago. Mother, father, 2 young children. They were looking for this." She produced a folded, weather-beaten map from inside her deerskin tunic. Caleb studied it by firelight, his expression darkening. "The Lost Butte Mine. Thought it was just a legend. It is real, and on Apache land." Sarah's eyes reflected the dancing flames. "Jackson thinks I can lead him there. That's why I'm worth more alive than dead. For now." Caleb folded the map, his decision made before he even realized it. "Then we get you back to your people, before Jackson and his boys catch up to us." Dawn found them traversing a rocky ridge, Caleb leading the horse along a narrow trail. His eyes constantly scanned the horizon. Years of cavalry training impossible to forget. He'd served as a captain in the Union Army during the war between the states. had seen men die by the hundreds at Antietam. That blood-soaked cornfield still haunted his dreams. Union soldiers advancing in perfect formation only to be cut down by Confederate artillery. After the war, he joined the frontier cavalry, only to resign his commission when ordered to participate in a raid against peaceful Apache settlements. "Hold up," he said suddenly, dropping to one knee and examining the ground. Fresh tracks crossed their path, unshod ponies moving east. "Your people?" Sarah studied the tracks, hope brightening her face. "Yes, maybe a hunting party. My tribe could be less than a day's ride from here." A distant glint caught Caleb's eye, sunlight reflecting off a rifle barrel far below in the canyon. "Down!" he hissed, pulling Sarah behind a boulder. Through his field glasses, he counted 4 riders. Jackson had split his forces, trying to flank them. "We've got company," he muttered, checking his Winchester Model 1873 rifle. The lever-action weapon could fire 15 rounds without reloading, a significant advantage in any firefight. "They're between us and where those tracks are leading." Sarah's face hardened with resolve. "There is another way, through Devil's Canyon. It is dangerous, but my people know it well." "More dangerous than those 4 rifles down there?" Her slight smile was answer enough. They changed course, heading north toward a jagged line of cliffs. As they rode, Caleb noticed Sarah studying him with guarded curiosity. "You were cavalry," she stated rather than asked. "Many of your kind have hunted mine." Caleb nodded grimly. "I was, until Cougar Pass." "What happened there?" Before he could answer, a rifle shot cracked the air. Caleb was off the horse in an instant, dragging Sarah down with him as 2 of Jackson's men emerged from behind a rock formation, rifles aimed. "Thought you could outrun us, Morgan?" the taller one jeered. What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. Caleb's first shot took the speaker in the chest. As he fell, the second man fired, the bullet cutting air where Caleb had been a split second before. Rolling to one knee, Caleb fired twice more. The second attacker collapsed, his rifle discharging harmlessly into the sky. Silence fell, broken only by the nervous snorting of the horse. Caleb reloaded methodically, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. This wasn't his first gunfight, wouldn't be his last. "We need to move," he said, helping Sarah to her feet. "Those shots will bring the others." As they mounted and galloped toward the canyon, Sarah's question hung unanswered in the air between them. Devil's Canyon earned its name. Sheer walls of red rock towered hundreds of feet overhead, squeezing the trail down to a narrow path barely wide enough for a single horse. Wind howled through the passageway, carrying the fine dust that stung eyes and coated lungs. By nightfall, thunder rumbled ominously, and the first fat raindrops began to fall. "There's a cave ahead," Sarah pointed through the increasing downpour. "My people use it when traveling through the canyon." The shelter was more than welcome as the storm unleashed its fury. Lightning illuminated the landscape in stark flashes, thunder shaking the very ground beneath them. Inside the cave, Caleb built a small fire well away from the entrance, where its light wouldn't betray their presence. While Sarah gathered brush for the fire, Caleb set a perimeter alarm, a simple but effective arrangement of loose rocks balanced atop a string of empty cartridges. He threaded rawhide through the cartridges and stretched it across the cave entrance at ankle height. Anyone approaching in darkness would trip the line, sending the rocks clattering down. A primitive but effective early warning system he'd learned from a Cheyenne scout during his cavalry days. "Your cavalry training," Sarah observed as he finished. "You were an officer." Caleb nodded, settling beside the fire and removing his Colt to clean it. Each part came apart in his hands with practiced ease. "Captain, 7th Cavalry. Before that, Union Army at Antietam and Gettysburg." "You've seen much death." "Too much." He reassembled the revolver, the metallic click of the cylinder rotating into place punctuating his words. "Most of it senseless." Sarah wrapped her blanket tighter around her shoulders, her dark eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Tell me about Cougar Pass." Caleb's hands stilled. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared into the fire as if seeing ghosts in the flames. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and flat. "5 years ago, I was ordered to lead a raid on an Apache settlement. Intelligence claimed they'd been raiding settlements, stealing livestock. I had my doubts, but orders were orders." His jaw tightened. "When we got there, I found women, children, old men. No warriors, no stolen cattle, just families." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar running the length of his forearm. A distinctive mark had been carved into the flesh, an eagle with outstretched wings, the symbol of his former cavalry unit. "My commanding officer, Major Harlan, ordered us to make an example of them. I refused. He tried to have me arrested for insubordination. There was a fight. I took this knife wound, but Harlan took a worse beating. I resigned my commission the next day, before they could court-martial me." Sarah had gone very still, her expression unreadable in the firelight. Slowly, she reached out and touched the scar on his arm, tracing the raised white line with her fingertip. Then, without warning, she was on her feet, a knife in her hand, its blade glinting in the firelight. "Liar," she hissed, tears glistening in her eyes. "You wear the mark of the Eagle Squadron. I know this scar. The men who murdered my family all carried it. My husband, my father. They died at Cougar Pass." Caleb didn't move, didn't reach for his weapon. He just looked at her, his eyes filled with a sadness so profound it transcended fear. "I couldn't stop them," he said quietly. "I tried. I saved who I could, mostly children, a few women. Harlan had me beaten and left for dead. By the time I recovered, the massacre was over." Sarah's hand trembled, the knife point wavering. "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't," Caleb replied simply. "But if I'd been part of that massacre, why would I risk my life to save you now?" Long seconds passed, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the distant rumble of thunder. Finally, Sarah lowered the knife, though suspicion still clouded her features. "I will watch you, cavalryman, closely." A humorless smile touched Caleb's lips. "I'd expect nothing less." The storm raged through the night. Sometime before dawn, Caleb was awakened by the sound of stones clattering, his alarm. In one fluid motion, he was on his feet, revolver drawn, rousing Sarah with his other hand. "Company," he whispered. Outside, lantern light bobbed in the darkness. Multiple voices carried on the wind. "I know they came this way, Jackson," a gruff voice insisted. "Trail was clear before the rain hit." "Morgan's in there. I can feel it." Jackson's voice was unmistakable, cold as a snake's belly. "And that Apache bitch with him." Caleb counted lanterns. 4, maybe 5 men. Too many to fight head-on in their current position. "Back of the cave," Sarah whispered. "There's another way out. A narrow passage." Caleb nodded, gathering their meager supplies. But as they prepared to retreat deeper into the cave, Jackson called out again, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "I know you're in there, Morgan. Come on out, and maybe I won't put a bullet in that thick skull of yours." "For old time's sake." Caleb froze, Sarah looking at him questioningly. "We served together," he explained quietly. "During the war, 4th of Virginia Cavalry, before he deserted, leading Confederate bushwhackers on a raid that killed half our company." Jackson's laughter drifted into the cave. "Remember Petersburg, Captain? Remember how many boys died because you insisted on following orders instead of common sense?" Caleb's jaw tightened at the memory. Petersburg, 1864. A bloody stalemate that lasted months. Their company had been ordered to hold a forward position despite being outflanked. Caleb had followed orders, while Jackson had argued for retreat. When their commanding officer refused, Jackson had deserted in the night, taking 5 men with him. The next day, Confederate forces overran their position. Only Caleb and 7 others survived. "You haven't changed a bit," Jackson continued, "still trying to save lost causes." Caleb remained silent, motioning for Sarah to lead the way to the back passage. As they retreated deeper into the cave, he pulled a small leather pouch from his saddlebag. Gunpowder. Sprinkling a trail of it across the cave floor, he lit the end with a burning stick from their fire. They were 20 feet into the narrow rear passage when the gunpowder ignited, creating a flash and a cloud of smoke that filled the cave entrance. Shouts of confusion erupted from outside, followed by random gunfire into the smoke. "That'll buy us some time," Caleb muttered as they squeezed through the tight passage. But not much. The back exit emerged high on the canyon wall, a treacherous descent awaiting them in the pre-dawn gloom. But it was their only chance. As the first rays of sunlight crested the eastern horizon, they were already miles away, having abandoned the horse to make better time across the rocky terrain where hooves would leave clear tracks. By midday, they crested a ridge and beheld a hidden valley below, nestled between towering cliffs. Smoke from cooking fires rose in thin columns from a settlement of hide teepees. Apache scouts patrolled the perimeter, nearly invisible against the landscape to untrained eyes. "My people," Sarah whispered, emotion making her voice tremble. For the first time since Caleb had known her, hope replaced fear in her expression. Their approach did not go unnoticed. Within minutes, they were surrounded by mounted warriors, bows drawn, spears leveled at Caleb's chest. Sarah called out in Apache, words Caleb couldn't understand. An older warrior rode forward, his face lined with age and authority. More words were exchanged before the warrior turned his attention to Caleb. "You bring a white man to our secret place," he said to Sarah in heavily accented English. "Why should we not kill him where he stands?" "He saved me from men who would have used me to find our people," Sarah replied. "He fights his own kind to protect ours." The warrior studied Caleb with eyes that missed nothing: the cavalry bearing, the well-worn colt, the scars of battle. "You have the look of a soldier." "Once," Caleb acknowledged. "Not anymore." Recognition suddenly dawned in the warrior's eyes as he noticed the scar on Caleb's arm. The eagle mark. His expression hardened. "You were at Cougar Pass." Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors, hands tightening on weapons. Caleb knew his next words might be his last. "I was," he admitted. "I tried to stop it. Failed." He met the warrior's gaze directly. "I've carried that failure every day since." The older warrior turned to Sarah, speaking rapidly in Apache. She responded, gesturing occasionally toward Caleb. The conversation went on for several tense minutes before the warrior finally nodded. "I am Chief Running Wolf," he said to Caleb. "Sarah tells me you fought your commander to save our people. Some of the children you helped escape are here now." He pointed toward the camp. "For this, we will not kill you, but trust must be earned." They were escorted into the encampment, Caleb aware of the many eyes watching his every move. Children peeked from behind hide flaps. Women paused in their work. Warriors maintained a respectful but vigilant distance. Chief Running Wolf led them to a central fire, where tribal elders had gathered. Among them was a young Apache warrior whose intense gaze never left Caleb. "This is Eagle Eye," Running Wolf explained. "His sister was among those you helped save at Cougar Pass. He has questions for you." Eagle Eye stepped forward, his English clear and precise, a skill he'd acquired during 3 years at a government school before escaping back to his people. "The white officer who ordered the killing, what was his name?" "Major Harold Harlan," Caleb replied without hesitation. "What did he look like?" "Tall, scar across his right cheek, missing the little finger on his left hand." Eagle Eye nodded, satisfied. "And where is he now?" "Dead," Caleb said flatly. "I made sure of it. 2 years ago, I tracked him to Dodge City. He didn't recognize me until it was too late. A long silence followed this revelation, broken finally by Running Wolf. You are a man of vengeance, then. Justice, Caleb corrected. There's a difference. Before the conversation could continue, a scout burst into the circle, speaking rapidly in Apache. Alarm spread across Running Wolf's face. Many riders approached from the south, he explained to Caleb. Armed white men. Caleb's expression darkened. Jackson must have followed our trail after all. He turned to Sarah. This is my fight. I brought this danger to your people. No, Eagle Eye interrupted. The white men who hunt Sarah also hunt all Apache. They seek the gold in our sacred mountains. He gestured westward. We have known of the Lost Butte mine for generations. We do not touch it, for the spirits there bring only death and misfortune. Running Wolf nodded gravely. Jackson is not alone. He brings many guns. We have seen their kind before. They will not stop until they have what they want or until they are dead. Then we make sure it's the latter, Caleb said grimly, checking his ammunition. I know how these men think, how they fight. If you'll trust me, I can help you defend this place. An hour later, Jackson and 15 hired guns rode confidently into the valley, following the obvious tracks Caleb and Sarah had purposely left. They found an apparently deserted encampment, teepees standing empty in the afternoon sun. Spread out, Jackson ordered. They can't have gone far. And find that map. The men dismounted, moving cautiously among the teepees. Caleb watched from his hidden position behind a rock outcropping, Winchester ready. He'd positioned the Apache warriors in a wide circle, using the terrain to maximum advantage. Some were hidden in the rocks above, others concealed in shallow pits covered with brush. Eagle Eye crouched beside him, bow drawn, waiting for the signal. Caleb had set traps throughout the camp, tripwires connected to bells, covered pits lined with sharpened stakes, and several carefully positioned rifles that could be fired remotely using strings. Old cavalry tricks combined with Apache hunting skills. Wait until they're all inside the perimeter, Caleb whispered to Eagle Eye. Then we close the trap. Suddenly, one of Jackson's men cried out, an arrow protruding from his chest. He'd wandered too close to a hidden warrior. Before the others could react, the attack came from all sides. Warriors rose from hidden positions among rocks and brush. Arrows whistled through the air with deadly accuracy. Caleb and Eagle Eye each picked off 2 gunmen with well-placed shots before Jackson's men even realized they were under attack. It's a trap, Jackson shouted, diving behind a large rock. Form up! Form up! Jackson, no stranger to ambushes, rallied his men behind a natural stone barricade. Morgan, I know you're out there. This doesn't have to end with everyone dead, Caleb signaled to Eagle Eye, who nodded and disappeared into the rocks. Moments later, flames erupted among Jackson's horses, sending the animals into a panicked frenzy. In the confusion, Apache warriors advanced, closing the distance. The battle was fierce but precisely orchestrated. Caleb directed the Apache forces with hand signals, positioning warriors to maintain crossfire on Jackson's position. 3 of Jackson's men tried to flank the Apache position, only to trigger one of Caleb's pit traps. Their screams echoed across the valley. Jackson's men, hired guns with no loyalty beyond their pay, began to falter as their numbers dwindled. Some broke and ran, only to be cut down by arrows from hidden archers. Soon, only Jackson and 3 others remained, pinned down and desperate. Last chance, Jackson, Caleb called from behind cover. Surrender now, and you ride out of here alive. Keep fighting, and you die here. Jackson's response was a bullet that ricocheted off the rock inches from Caleb's head. Always the righteous one, weren't you, Morgan? Even back in Virginia. His voice carried across the battlefield, edged with desperation and rage. You don't know what you're protecting. There's more at stake than some Apache girl or a gold mine. A movement caught Caleb's eye. Sarah exposed momentarily as she darted between positions, carrying water to wounded warriors. Jackson saw her too. His rifle swung in her direction. Caleb didn't hesitate. He broke cover, firing as he ran. Jackson's shot went wide as Caleb's bullet found his shoulder, spinning him around. The two men faced each other across 20 yards of open ground. Both wounded, both with nothing left to lose. "It's over, Jackson," Caleb said, his revolver trained on his former comrade's chest. "Drop the gun." Jackson's laugh was hollow, blood staining his shirt. "You think this ends with me? I'm just the hired help, Morgan. The railroad's moving west, and nothing's standing in its way. Not mountains, not Apache, not even righteous fools like you." Understanding dawned in Caleb's eyes. The Southern Pacific. This isn't about gold at all. It's about the land. Route through this valley would save them millions, Jackson confirmed, his gun still gripped tightly despite his wound. Apache need to disappear. Gold Rush would bring in settlers, push the Indians out. Clean, simple, profitable. Except for the people who die. Jackson's eyes narrowed. People die every day, Captain. You of all men should know that. You let your men die at Petersburg because you wouldn't disobey an order. Now you're willing to die for strangers because you feel guilty? "I'm not the same man I was at Petersburg," Caleb replied evenly. "That's the difference between us, Jackson." "You never change." A tense silence fell between them, years of history hanging in the balance. Then, with surprising swiftness for a wounded man, Jackson raised his pistol. He was fast. Caleb was faster. The echo of the single shot reverberated across the valley, then faded to silence. Jackson lay motionless in the dust, his final expression one of vague surprise. In the aftermath, as the Apache warriors secured the remaining gunmen, Chief Running Wolf approached Caleb, who stood silently over Jackson's body. "You knew this man," the chief observed. "Once," Caleb replied. "In another life." Running Wolf nodded thoughtfully. "What will you do now, Caleb Morgan? Return to your world?" Caleb gazed across the valley, taking in the Apache encampment, the warriors who had fought alongside him, Sarah standing proudly among her people. "My world is wherever justice needs a hand," he said finally. "Jackson was right about one thing. The railroad won't stop coming, but maybe I can make sure they build around your land, not through it. I've got some connections in the territorial capital who owe me favors." Eagle Eye approached, extending his hand in the white man's gesture of friendship. "Then you will return to us?" Caleb clasped the offered hand. "Count on it." As the sun set over the hidden valley, Caleb prepared for his journey. Sarah approached as he tightened the cinch on a borrowed Apache pony. She carried a small bundle wrapped in deerskin. "Eagle Eye says you fought well today," she said. "Like an Apache, not a cavalryman." "Highest compliment I've ever received," Caleb replied with the ghost of a smile. "My people say you have washed away the blood of Cougar Pass," she continued quietly. "Your new name among us is He Who Stands Between." She handed him the deerskin bundle. Inside was a small leather pouch containing an intricately beaded medallion, an Apache symbol of protection, along with provisions for his journey. "The spirits will watch over you," she explained. Their eyes met, holding a moment longer than necessary. Words unspoken passed between them. Respect, understanding, perhaps something more that circumstances would not yet allow to grow. Caleb secured the medallion inside his shirt, close to his heart. With a final nod to Running Wolf and Eagle Eye, he turned his horse toward the eastern pass. The path ahead was long and fraught with danger. Railroad barons wouldn't take kindly to interference with their plans. But for the first time in years, Caleb Morgan rode with purpose rather than ghosts at his back. As the last light faded from the sky, he paused at the ridge to look back. The Apache fires glowed like earthbound stars in the valley below. A promise made, a debt partially repaid, a new road forward. Justice on the frontier rarely came from courtrooms or law books. Sometimes it came from the steady hand and unwavering resolve of a man willing to stand for what was right, regardless of the cost. And Caleb Morgan was precisely that kind of man.